In my last life, I rescued an old woman my sister was bullying, and she gave me a beauty pearl. As a thank you, I then used my newfound beauty to become a viral sensation and marry into a wealthy family. This time, my sister got to the beauty pearl first. She told me everything that was mine would now be hers. But she didn't know the beauty pearl was actually a cursed charm. Her new life as a bombshell was the beginning of her downfall. When I was reborn, my sister, Jessica, was kicking a janitor. Are you blind? You got mop water all over me. Could you even afford to replace this dress? The exact same scene had played out in my previous life. The janitor was an old woman with graying hair. Jessica's pointed shoe cut her leg, and blood started trickling out. Terrified of losing her job, the woman didn't dare talk back. She just kept her head down, apologizing in a thick, regional accent. Jessica just scoffed and walked away. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. I went to a nearby convenience store and bought antiseptic, gauze, and a bottle of warm milk for the woman. When I handed them to her, she wiped her tears and told me I was a good girl. She fumbled around in her pocket and pulled out a small bead, handing it to me. The bead was colorful, but the material was unremarkable. It looked like glass or plastic, the kind of thing you could buy by the handful for $10 at a flea market. This is a beauty pearl, she said. It has chosen you as its master. You will become the most beautiful woman in the world. At the time, I didn't take her seriously. But after that, it was like I had a massive glow-up. I just kept getting more and more beautiful. My features and face shape didn't change drastically, but they became more refined. My skin greef as pale as snow, my hair as dark as ink. Everyone who saw me said I had an indescribable aura. Soon, a few candid photos of me went viral online, and I became a top-tier influencer. Brands wanted me for endorsements, famous directors invited me to be in their movies, and the richest heirs spent fortunes just to make me smile. I never expected to relive this moment, the moment I helped the old janitor. But this time, after kicking the woman, Jessica suddenly froze. She looked around, her expression a mix of shock and delight. I realized she had been reborn too. Suddenly, Jessica's arrogance vanished. She rushed to help the janitor up, showering her with apologies. I'm so sorry, ma'am, that was an accident. Are you hungry or thirsty? I just bought a cheese Danish. Would you like it? The janitor kept her head down, ignored Jessica, and tried to walk away. When being nice didn't work, Jessica resorted to force. She called out, and the two guys she was shopping with immediately flanked the old woman, grabbing her arms. Finally, Jessica found the pearl in the janitor's pocket. I wanted to stop her, but the two guys blocked my path. Jessica smiled as she slipped the pearl onto her wrist. The glass bead glowed for a moment, then went dark. It had accepted its new master. Jessica walked over to me, her face glowing with triumph. Sarah, the magic bullet is mine this time. Let's see how you compete with me now. I knew my sister, Jessica, had always hated me. We're actually cousins. After my parents died, my aunt and uncle took me in, mostly because of pressure from other relatives. Growing up, I got better grades than Jessica and had more talents. We were in the same class, and at parent-teacher conferences, my teacher would praise me for being smart and hardworking, then turn around and criticize Jessica. The only advantage Jessica had was that she was prettier than me. I was average-looking and always wore thick, black-framed glasses that covered half my face. Jessica, on the other hand, was the prettiest girl in our class. She loved to dress up and always stood out among the plainly dressed students. At family gatherings, our relatives would always point at us and laugh. Sarah will have a great career, and Jessica will marry well. Whenever that happened, a faint smile would appear on Jessica's face. In her eyes, working hard for a living could never compare to the pampered life of marrying rich. But then I got the beauty pearl. That powerful cheat code turned me into a world-class beauty who could live off her looks alone, someone an ordinary pretty girl like Jessica couldn't even dream of becoming. Jessica completely fell apart. I didn't know if she'd been granted a system like Power Up or made a deal with the devil. Whatever it was, she brought us both back to when we were 18. And this time, after snatching the beauty pearl, Jessica began to change. When she returned to school after the break, every eye was on her. With her pale face, long dark hair, and long-lashed eyes that seemed to hold the morning mist. She looked like a painted goddess stepping out of a scroll when the sunlight hit her. It felt like every guy in the school heard his heart skip a beat. They tripped over themselves to get her attention, asking if she wanted boba, or if they could save her a seat in the study hall. Jessica just smiled and humored them, then made her way over to me. She casually draped an arm over my shoulder and whispered in my ear, "I remember in our last life, all these guys were chasing you. How does it feel, Sarah? A whole break has passed, and without the beauty pearl, you're still just the same ugly duckling no one loves." I stood there, my face calm behind my thick glasses. "Jessica," I said, "having a lot of admirers isn't always a good thing." Jessica had been hoping to see a look of utter defeat on my face. Hearing that instead, she was instantly annoyed. She took a step back, sizing me up coldly. After a moment, a malicious grin spread across her face, as if she'd thought of something fun. The next second, she threw herself backward, tumbling down several steps before landing in a heap on the floor. Then, clutching her ankle, Jessica cried out, "Sarah, I'm sorry. I know you're mad I got the lead singer part, but the teacher arranged it. I didn't mean to take it from you." It took me a second to realize she was talking about the class choir performance. I had always been the lead singer, but because the teacher heard school administrators would be at the recital, she switched me out for Jessica at the last minute. The teacher had apologized to me. "Sarah, I know you're the better singer, but stage presence is also important. Jessica is just a better fit for the spotlight." Honestly, I didn't care. But I never thought Jessica would hold on to it like that. Then again, it made sense. Jessica was desperate to beat me, so of course she'd remember every little victory. Now, she was crumpled at the bottom of the stairs, looking fragile, but her voice was loud enough to draw a crowd of students. A beautiful girl, looking utterly helpless on the ground, clutching her slender ankle. Her brow was furrowed, her eyes were red-rimmed, and a single tear clung to her lashes, refusing to fall. It was a heart-wrenching, picture-perfect moment of distress. Murmurs of blame started rippling through the crowd, all directed at me. "Sarah, if you want to be the lead, go talk to the teacher. Why take it out on Jessica? You don't really think you'll get the part back if she's injured, do you? Are you so used to being the best that you can't stand it when someone else gets something you want?" The accusation swirled around me. Jessica looked up at me with tears in her eyes. If beautiful people were the main characters of the world, then right now, all the bystanders were rallying to defend the gorgeous, tragic heroine. Soon, a tall boy stepped out of the crowd. It was Kyle, the most popular guy in school. Kyle was the guy Jessica had been crushing on since the first day of freshman year. But too many pretty girls liked Kyle. Jessica had tried giving him love letters several times, but he'd coldly refused them all. And yet this same aloof, handsome guy had, in my previous life, approached me after I got the beauty pearl. He offered me a cupcake he'd bought, and asked if I'd come watch his basketball game. How could Jessica not have been driven mad with jealousy? And now Kyle, who had once told me he would always like me, shot me a look of cold disgust. Then he walked over to Jessica and swept her up into his arms. "I'll take you to the nurse's office." The students around them erupted in exaggerated whoops and hollers, as if they were watching a scene from a teen drama. Jessica's face turned beet red. She was shy and ecstatic, and the blush on her pale skin made her look even more beautiful. As Kyle carried Jessica toward the nurse's office, the crowd dispersed, leaving me alone in the hallway, watching them go. I had actually considered telling her the truth about the beauty pearl. I wanted to tell her it was a cursed charm. For every advantage the pearl gives you, it demands a tenfold price. In my last life, if Jessica hadn't brought me back to when we were 18, I would have most likely died a horrible death in Southeast Asia. But now, watching her and Kyle walk away, I decided to keep my mouth shut. Some consequences are best learned firsthand. Honestly, I was perfectly happy with my life without the beauty pearl. In my last life, my beauty made me famous overnight. I quickly got lost in the glitzy, superficial world of influencers, and my grades plummeted. My aunt and uncle wanted me to cash in on my fame as quickly as possible, so they booked me for countless brand deals, keeping me running from one photo shoot to another every single day. Many rich men invited me to their dinners, using me and other young, beautiful girls as decorations for their parties. Looking back, I'm sure Jessica was incredibly envious of those days when I wore designer clothes and frequented exclusive venues. Late at night, she must have scrolled through the endless comments on my account, the goddess tier visuals, praise, and the cheesy pickup lines from fans, and bitterly regretted that she wasn't the one who had helped the old janitor. But only I knew the other side of that life. I bombed my college entrance exams, and my aunt and uncle didn't let me go to college. The high-intensity photo shoots and the vile rumors spread about me online gave me a nervous breakdown. I had to rely on increasingly larger doses of medication just to fall asleep at night. At those dinners with rich men, the middle-aged guys would relentlessly pressure me to drink, and once I was too drunk to resist, their hands would wander onto my thighs. A famous director offered me a movie role, but along with the script, he handed me his hotel room key card. My aunt and uncle knew exactly what would happen, but they forced me to go, even drugging me to make sure I did. Of course, Jessica, my aunt and uncle's precious daughter, knew nothing about this. She just spent the money I earned, enjoying a life of leisure in our new mansion, all while complaining that she wasn't the one who had become famous. This time, I was determined not to let that tragedy repeat itself. I had learned that the benefits of beauty came with immense dangers. One wrong step, and you could fall into an abyss. On the other hand, real knowledge and skills, though difficult to acquire, could give me a stable and happy life. So I poured all my energy into my studies. My grades were already good, and now, with no distractions, I could fully immerse myself in my books. At the choir performance a week later, Jessica stood center stage in a white tulle dress. When the pale blue light hit her, she looked like a swan in a lake. She sang off-key, so the teacher had pre-recorded her parts to play during her solo. Jessica also made sure to wrap her barely injured ankle in thick gauze, limping theatrically when she bowed and left the stage. What's more moving than a swan? A swan with a broken wing. Instantly, all the blame was directed at me again. Jessica seized the opportunity and started spreading rumors, her voice full of feigned grievance. She claimed I was jealous of her beauty and always told on her to my aunt and uncle, getting her punished. She said her bad grades were my fault, too, because I used various tricks to sabotage her studies. After complaining, Jessica would tearfully tell everyone, "Even though Sarah treats me badly, I've never blamed her. She's my little sister after all." This act triggered the strongest protective instincts in the guys at our school. They were all furious, vowing to punish me, the villain, for their pure, fragile beauty. Thumbtacks and dead insects started appearing on my chair. I'd come back from the restroom to find my backpack thrown out of a fourth-floor window. The school gate was spray-painted with obscenities, with "Sarah is a slut" written in big red letters. The more viciously someone bullied me, the more likely they were to win the beauty's heart. Jessica would tell them with red-rimmed eyes, "Thank you for helping me. You're so nice." Then she'd turn to me with a smirk and say, "See, Sarah? I don't even have to lift a finger to get my revenge." Of all the bullies, Kyle was the most dedicated. In my past life, I had asked him what he liked about me. He had answered very seriously, "Sarah, I like everything about you. Your personality, your talent, your character, I like it all." He never mentioned my looks. But now my personality, talent, and character were the same as before. Yet Kyle had his friends shove me onto the tiled floor of the bathroom, and he pressed his basketball shoe down on my hand. "If I hear you've been bullying Jessica again, I'll break your knuckles." Pain shot through my hand, and I managed a grim smile. "Kyle, you like Jessica?" Kyle froze for a second, then said coldly, "Of course. What do you like about her?" He thought for a moment. "I like everything about her." I burst out laughing, almost crying with laughter. "Oh, sister, beauty is a veil. Whoever wears it can no longer see the real world." When we got home, Jessica saw my bruised hand. She smiled and asked, "How does it feel? In our last life, I seem to remember you had a bit of a crush on Kyle. What's it like to be betrayed by someone you cared about? Tell me all about it." She was desperate to find joy in my pain, to balance out her own past frustrations. I didn't say anything, just glanced down at the beauty pearl on her wrist. She noticed my gaze and said scornfully, "You're not still thinking about snatching the beauty pearl back, are you? You know it's useless." I knew that once the pearl chose a master, no one else could take it. The reason was simple. Jessica had tried to steal it from me in our past life. She went to great lengths to take the pearl, only for it to reappear on my wrist moments later. Now that it belonged to her, I couldn't take it either. Not that I wanted to. I had just noticed a dark line, like a crack, within the pearl's vibrant colors. It was the color of the curse hidden within the beauty pearl, and it was growing darker. Just then Jessica, who was standing behind me, saw what I was pulling out of my backpack, an early admission notice from Harvard. I never got to go to college in my last life. This time, I was determined to make that dream come true. Oh, look at you. Got an early admission offer? Jessica glanced at the letter with a mocking expression, curling her lip. Well, I guess without your magic bullet, you have no choice but to grind away in the rat race. You'll graduate, get some dead-end job, and still make less than I do in a single day as an influencer. Jessica was fixated on becoming famous, and her chance came quickly. The school was filming a promotional video, and thanks to her stunning appearance at the choir performance, the principal remembered her and personally requested her for the shoot. In the video, Jessica wore a simple school uniform and a ponytail, which only highlighted her exquisite face. She was as beautiful as a lotus bud glistening with morning dew. When the video was posted online, it went viral. Jessica was named the nation's #1 campus beauty, and her social media accounts gained 1 million followers overnight. Everyone came knocking. Talent scouts, agents, directors, brand representatives. Jessica quickly threw herself into the influencer life I'd had before. But she soon discovered that the job wasn't as glamorous or easy as it looked. For a brand endorsement, she'd have to stand in high heels for over 10 hours, holding the same smile for the camera. Filming for a movie was even harder. Shooting scenes in the water during her period was standard, and she was constantly fending off sleazy investors who would grope her or threaten her for sexual favors. Of course, compared to the huge financial returns, these hardships were nothing. Countless people worked much harder for far less, just to make a living. But Jessica wasn't willing to endure even the slightest discomfort. In her mind, a beauty was meant to be pampered and protected, kept in a jar of honey. So she cried to my aunt and uncle, "Marrying well is better than working hard. I don't want to do this anymore. Instead of struggling like this, I should use my fame to marry into a rich family." Jessica was their biological daughter, so they wouldn't exploit her the way they had exploited me. They agreed. Jessica began to carefully sift through her suitors. If a high school heartthrob like Kyle had once made her heart flutter, men of his caliber no longer caused the slightest ripple. After all, her admirers now included A-list singers, popular actors, self-made entrepreneurs, and second-generation heirs sitting on mountains of gold. And I knew exactly who Jessica would choose. Sure enough, rumors of Jessica and Ethan Yu, the second son of a luxury goods empire, soon hit the trending topics. In a video captured by paparazzi, Ethan, who was known for his aloof and refined image, was uncharacteristically attentive, opening car doors for Jessica and draping his coat over her shoulders. He held her hand as they entered a revolving restaurant, his adoring gaze fixed on her the entire time. By then, I was already sitting in a classroom at Harvard. During a study break in the library, I scrolled through the news about Jessica and Ethan. A classmate leaned over, full of envy. "Wow, that's Ethan Yu. He's a top-tier heir and a Yale grad himself. Jessica is so lucky." Someone else commented sourly, "Ugh, that influencer has nothing but a pretty face. I doubt Ethan would actually marry her." They were quickly shut down. "Dude, that's Jessica. She's so beautiful, any man would want to marry her. See? The world is full of naive people. In my last life, I was the one who became Ethan's girlfriend." The day the news of our relationship broke, Jessica went ballistic and smashed everything she could in the house. She felt she had lost completely. No matter how hard she tried, she would never marry a man better than Ethan. The relatives' old prophecy about her marrying well, which she once wore like a badge of honor, now felt like a slap in the face. So while Ethan took me on a trip, Jessica found a way to drag me back to the age of 18. Even though Jessica had been so cruel to me, I really should thank her. After all, if it weren't for her, I probably would have died in Southeast Asia at Ethan's hands. Because she had inadvertently saved my life, I decided to give Jessica one last warning. That summer, as Jessica was excitedly packing her bags to move into Ethan's villa, I walked over to her. People are driven by self-interest, I said. The more powerful they are, the less likely they are to be fools. Sister, in the face of immense capital, beauty isn't a rare commodity. Think about it. Why would Ethan marry you? The moment the words left my mouth, a sharp slap echoed through the room. Jessica had hit me. Who do you think you're looking down on, Sarah? She shrieked. Ethan would have married you, so why wouldn't he marry me? I wanted to tell her that Ethan never intended to marry me, either. In my last life, I had always been suspicious of Ethan's motives. But at the time, several of my major brand deals were with his family's company. My career was on the line, so I couldn't just turn down a major client like Ethan. He didn't push it. He just invited me on a trip to Thailand, ostensibly to do some prep work for an upcoming Southeast Asia-themed photo shoot. I agreed. By the time I realized something was wrong and tried to escape, it was too late. I felt a needle prick my neck, and everything went black. I was tied up, loaded onto the Yu family's private jet, and flown to Southeast Asia. When I arrived, I was stripped naked and placed on an altar. The bigger the business, the more superstitious the people running it. Mr. Yu, Ethan's father, was no exception. He had cancer. Distrusting the doctors, he went to a master he knew in Thailand. The master told him he was being haunted by a vengeful spirit, and if the spirit could be exorcised, the cancer would heal on its own. And the catalyst for the exorcism was a virgin who possessed beauty, fame, and wealth. Her blood could drive the spirit away. So Ethan threw himself into the search for his father. Honestly, I didn't think a Yale grad like Ethan actually believed any of this nonsense. But Ethan wasn't trying to cure his father's cancer. He was trying to prove his devotion. After all, Mr. Yu was in his 70s, had been through 3 legal wives, and had 7 legitimate children, not to mention countless illegitimate ones. Ethan wasn't one of the favored children. With his father's cancer diagnosis, he had to race against time to win him over. So Ethan went all out and finally found a girl who was beautiful, famous, and still a virgin. Kidnapping her and taking her blood was, of course, an extremely risky venture that would require a massive cover-up. One mistake and he could ruin himself. Ethan wanted to use this to prove to his father, I am willing to take any risk to cure you. As the knife cut into my skin, I heard Mr. Yu ask Ethan, if this girl goes to the media after she gets back to the country, it could cause a huge PR crisis. Ethan's voice turned hard. I understand. Don't worry, her disappearance will become a cold case. In other words, he was going to silence me permanently. Mr. Yu smiled with satisfaction. I struggled desperately, but it was useless. I watched helpless, as my blood flowed out of me. The blood loss made me pass out. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the shopping mall. Jessica was standing in front of me, kicking the old janitor. In a daze from my near-death experience, I watched her snatch the beauty pearl. Now in the present, Jessica shook her stinging hand and picked up her suitcase. Sarah, she said triumphantly, if you ever dare say something like that to me again, the first thing I'll do after I marry Ethan is have you thrown into the bay to feed the fish. I held my stinging cheek and silently stepped aside. Go ahead, sis, I said softly. Good luck. After moving into Ethan's villa, Jessica flooded her Instagram with her new luxury lifestyle. Someone had the chef prepare a special nutritious meal just for me. Every meal is customized. I told him he didn't have to go to so much trouble, but he said it's no trouble at all, that I deserve the best. The post was accompanied by photos of food served in exquisite dishes. I looked at them silently and sighed. I had eaten those same meals in my last life. Ethan told me they were a special nutritious diet customized for me. But in reality, it was because the Thai shaman said the offering for Mr. Yu's exorcism had to be absolutely pure. For 49 days before the ritual, the offering couldn't eat regular grains and had to consume special foods to keep her blood clean. In my last life, I eventually refused to eat, so Ethan had people hold me down and force feed me. So now, looking at the beautiful pictures of food Jessica posted, I just felt sick to my stomach. But I couldn't be bothered with Jessica anymore. I had more important things to do. I was applying for an internship at a company. It wasn't a top firm in the industry, but its founder was named Isabel Yu. Isabel was Ethan's half-sister and one of Mr. Yu's most accomplished children. She had started her own company a few years ago, and though it was still young, it was already showing unstoppable momentum. Because Ethan's mother had been the other woman and indirectly caused the death of Isabel's mother, the siblings' relationship was a bitter rivalry. My gut told me that Isabel could help me achieve a lot of my goals. However, getting into Isabel's company wasn't easy. My resume went unanswered. A classmate told me that Isabel disliked hiring students and rarely offered internships. I started to get anxious. I still had almost 2 years until graduation. If I waited that long, Ethan's exorcism ritual would be long over, and there would be no point in finding Isabel. My classmate saw how badly I wanted to work for Isabel's company and suggested, even though Isabel doesn't like hiring students, a senior from our major managed to get an internship there last month. Maybe you can ask her? But she's kind of cold and doesn't just help anyone. I quickly asked, what's the senior's name? Holly Sue. I found Holly Sue. Surprisingly, Holly, who had a reputation for being aloof, heard me out and immediately agreed to give me an internal referral. I thanked her profusely, but she just pushed up her gold-rimmed glasses and said coolly, "Don't forget me when you make it big." For some reason, I felt a strange, deeper meaning in her tone. And so 2 weeks later, I successfully started as an intern at Isabel's company. As the big boss, Isabel's office was on the top floor, and interns like me weren't allowed up there. But after observing her daily routine, I finally cornered her in the break room one Friday night while I was working late. Isabel was dressed in a sharp, dark gray pantsuit, her eyeliner bold and commanding. She glanced at me and said dismissively, "You're one of the new interns, right? Do you need something?" Her presence was intimidating, but I wasn't cowed. I met her gaze and said calmly, "Ms. Yu, I want to be part of the Miami project." In my past life, I didn't have direct contact with Isabel, but I remembered that the Miami project was her greatest success. Thanks to favorable policies and a Black Swan event, it broke revenue records within a year, and everyone involved in the project became wealthy. Hearing my words, Isabel scoffed and didn't even bother to look at me again. The Miami project is the company's main focus this year. Participants are required to have at least 5 years of experience. Interns are not eligible. Just as Isabel was about to turn and leave, I spoke. "Ms. Yu, what if I told you I know Ethan's secret?" Isabel froze mid-stride. She turned back, her eyes narrowing, sharp as a hawk's. I wasn't afraid. I just held her gaze. After a long moment, Isabel said in a low voice, "Go on." Isabel had always despised Ethan and looked down on him. She found his choice of Jessica as a girlfriend to be particularly tacky and classless. But she never imagined such a huge secret lay behind it. This was the deal I wanted to make with Isabel. "Ms. Yu, the Miami project is currently valued at $60 million. But if the ritual Ethan is planning for your father is successful, your father's affection for him will undoubtedly grow." I didn't finish, but Isabel understood. If the ritual worked, Mr. Yu's will would be changed, significantly increasing Ethan's inheritance. Given the vastness of the Yu family fortune, the amount at stake was far more than $60 million. Isabel was silent for only a moment before saying, "This Sunday night, my family is having a small dinner at Ethan's villa. I'll bring you along as my personal assistant. You'll have to prove to me that what you're saying is true." That Sunday night, Isabel did indeed take me to the Yu family dinner, but I didn't expect her to bring another personal assistant besides me. It was my senior, Holly Sue. I had always had a strange feeling about Holly. She was only a year older than me, an inexperienced student with no real credentials. She didn't seem to work very hard, often coming in late and leaving early, sometimes disappearing for days. But Isabel seemed to value her highly. I had even overheard her privately call Holly Miss Sue. Today, Holly was dressed in her usual simple style. A white blouse, dark blue trousers, and gold-rimmed glasses, looking every bit the part of a chairman's secretary. While Isabel was greeting her relatives, Holly leaned in close to me and said quietly, "Ms. Yu told me to assist you. First, we'll have dinner. After dinner, there will be a dessert and social hour. People will be mingling freely. We can use that opportunity to search the villa. I nodded and stayed close behind Isabel with Holly, trying to keep a low profile. The villa was huge, bustling with chefs, maids, and assistants. We didn't stand out. But somehow Jessica still spotted me. Jessica, clearly seeing herself as the lady of the house, appeared on Ethan's arm. The moment she saw me, she sneered. Well, if it isn't my cousin. So you got into Harvard just to end up as a waitress? Ethan stood by Jessica's side, handsome in a tailored suit, the picture of a perfect gentleman. He glanced at Isabel's displeased expression, then patted Jessica's arm, trying to smooth things over with a faint smile. This is my sister Isabel's assistant. An assistant? Isn't that the same as a waitress? Jessica sat down at the table and lifted her chin. Pour me some tea. I didn't move. Jessica looked over, her eyebrows knitting together, her voice turning sharp. Did you hear me? Pour me some tea. Her bossy attitude was clearly embarrassing Ethan. But a good ritual offering was hard to come by, and Ethan didn't want to fight with Jessica right now. He just stood there, pretending it had nothing to do with him. All eyes in the hall turned to me. After a brief hesitation, I walked forward, respectfully poured hot tea into a porcelain cup, and handed it to Jessica. Jessica snorted, a smirk playing on her lips, and refused to take it. She was trying to put me in my place, deliberately punishing me in front of everyone. The cup was scorching hot. The pain became unbearable, and finally my hand gave out. The cup and its scalding tea spilled all over Jessica's cocktail dress. Jessica shrieked, jumping up. Sarah, are you trying to get yourself killed? Before she could finish, Holly rushed forward. She steadied Jessica and barked at me. What's wrong with you? Hurry up and help Miss Jo apply some ointment. Putting on a show of frantic panic, I obeyed Holly's command, and together we supported Jessica from both sides. Jessica didn't want our help, but our 4 hands were like iron clamps, holding her firmly as we half-dragged her out of the main hall. Behind us, I could faintly hear Isabel offering a fake apology to Ethan. He remained silent, his face livid. Jessica's shrieking and cursing had clearly humiliated him, so he didn't follow us. Holly and I brought Jessica to a quiet room. Holly held down the squawking Jessica and snapped at me. Go find the first aid kit now. I understood. I turned and ran. It was dinner time, and everyone was gathered in the main hall. This was the perfect opportunity to search the villa. Based on my experience of living in this villa for several months in my past life, I headed straight for the basement. That's where Ethan would be storing the ritual items. I crossed the garden, and just as I was about to head for the basement, I bumped into someone. I was about to apologize when I saw the person's face and froze. It was an old woman with gray hair and wrinkled skin. It was the old janitor who had the beauty pearl. What was she doing at the Yu family's villa? The old woman staggered from the impact and shot me a displeased look. I quickly apologized, saying I was looking for medicine. She pointed me toward the medicine room, and after thanking her, I hurried off. After grabbing the burn ointment, I returned to the garden. Once I confirmed the old woman had gone to the main hall, I put a hand on my pounding heart. Luckily, I hadn't saved the janitor in this life, so she didn't have a strong impression of me. Plus, I looked very different from my high school self, so she didn't recognize me. But that brief encounter made me realize that everything related to the beauty pearl was likely part of a conspiracy. While no one was around, I quickly went to the basement. The basement had a passcode, but since I had been there in my past life, I knew the code was a combination of Ethan's birthday and phone number. I entered the code, pushed open the heavy door, and stepped inside. The moment I entered, I was nearly blinded by the sheer amount of treasure in the room. Piles of gold had been cast into the shapes of small demons, arranged in neat rows. Huge, glassy jadeite were carved into the shape of amulets, covered in symbols I couldn't decipher. These were all items needed for the exorcism ritual. They would be placed on the altar around the offering. The basement was also filled with a foul, fishy stench. Porcelain jars lined the walls, and the smell was coming from them. I lifted the lid of the one closest to me. Inside was a whole jar of soybeans soaked in blood. The next one contained lotus seeds, also soaked in blood. Some of the blood was from black dogs, some from roosters, things traditionally used to ward off evil. If Jessica knew that the nutritious meals she ate every day were made from these ingredients, she would probably vomit her guts out. I took out my phone, photographed everything, and sent the pictures to Isabel. Finally, when I lifted the lid of the innermost jar, I froze. This jar was half full of high-quality Tahitian pearls. The other half was filled with slippery, slimy fish eyes. The two were mixed together, the slime from the fish eyes coating the pearls. They were about the same size, creating a bizarre texture where it was hard to tell one from the other. That texture was very familiar, the beauty pearl. This was the beauty pearl. I had no idea what kind of dark magic this was, and a shiver ran down my spine. But before I could even process it, I heard footsteps at the door. I shot my head up and saw a pair of leather shoes at the top of my line of sight. Ethan's shoes. He was coming in. I quickly put the lid back on the jar and hid behind it. Ethan walked in, and I watched as his shoes stopped right in front of me. Then I saw him lean over, looking behind the jar. In that split second, a voice called from the doorway. "Mr. Yu, are you there?" Ethan reflexively turned his head. In that instant, I dropped to the floor and rolled behind a nearby shelf. Not wanting the person to come in, Ethan strode over to the door. "I'm here. What is it?" The woman's voice was crisp and clear. "Ms. Yu asked me to invite you to the tea room to discuss whether you'd like to invest in the Miami project." It was Holly. Ethan said impatiently, "I know. I'm dealing with something private. I'll be there in 10 minutes. While they were talking, I had already moved from behind the shelf to the door and slipped out of the basement. Ethan's back was to me, and Holly was facing me. Seeing that I had made it out, she nodded at Ethan. "Please be quick then. Ms. Yu has other plans for the evening." After Ethan went back into the basement, Holly and I met up outside. We hid in the shadows of the garden and saw Ethan standing anxiously at the basement door, as if waiting for someone. A moment later, someone did arrive. It was the old janitor. She approached Ethan, her voice old but calm. "Mr. Yu, you wish to see me?" Ethan was anxiously smoking a cigarette. "Master, I have a bad feeling. I'm worried the secret in the basement will be discovered. Can we move the ceremony up?" The old janitor thought for a moment and nodded. "I'll make the arrangements." Holly looked at my stunned expression and asked quietly, "What's wrong?" I stammered, "I get it now." The conspiracy had started long before I thought. The Yu family had been involved from the very beginning. The old woman was the master in charge of the exorcism ritual. She had posed as a janitor to scout for suitable young women. Holly listened and nodded. "You finally understand." I looked at her in shock. What did she mean? Wasn't she just a random senior from my school? How did she seem to know more than I did? Holly took off her glasses and wiped them. "Here's the deal. I'm a businesswoman. I help clients achieve wishes that are normally impossible. Your cousin Jessica was my client. In her last life, she came to me and wished to be reborn. Our rule is that we must understand the client's true reason for wanting to be reborn, or we don't provide the service. So Jessica told me about the beauty pearl. When I heard her description of the pearl, I guessed it involved Southeast Asian dark magic. I murmured, "So you just..." Holly nodded. "So I decided to get involved. After all, the Yu family is seriously rich. Each of the Yu children has their own master. Ethan's master is this old woman. Isabel's master," Holly pointed to herself. "Well, that's me. And here I was thinking she was just another intern like me." I asked Holly, "Since you knew the beauty pearl involved dark magic, why didn't you stop Jessica?" Holly shook her head. "Everyone has their own karma. You can't just interfere. If you force it, not only might it not end well, but you could also take on their karmic debt." Jessica's request was to be reborn. I helped her achieve that, and she got the beauty pearl. "That's a completed transaction," she said. "As for the consequences, she has to bear those herself." Jessica's consequences arrived swiftly. Ethan and the old woman moved the ritual up, and she was taken to Southeast Asia. On a massive altar, Jessica was tied to a wooden frame. She was trembling all over but couldn't move because she had been injected with a heavy dose of anesthetic. Across from her, a huge spirit-summoning banner flapped violently in the wind. The old woman stood behind this banner. The banner had blocked my view in my past life, which was why I never saw her face and didn't realize she was the time master Mr. Yu had hired. Just as the knife was about to cut Jessica's skin and her blood was about to flow onto the amulets on the altar, the old woman began a strange dance behind the banner. Suddenly, gunshots rang out in the distance. It was Isabel, arriving with the police. With the ritual on the brink of success, Ethan, his eyes red with fury, tried to fight back against the police. He was shot in the shoulder and arrested. The bedridden Mr. Yu was also taken into custody. However, in the chaos, everyone suddenly realized that the old woman and Jessica were gone. And along with them, a violet jadeite worth over $100 million from the altar had also vanished. Holly and I had been following Isabel. When Holly noticed the jadeite was missing, she frowned. "This is bad," she whispered. "That jadeite was the linchpin of this whole ritual. If the old woman has it, she can still complete the ceremony." Mr. Yu burst into loud laughter. He had used the chaos to order his driver and personal bodyguards to protect the old woman, and the offering at all costs. As long as the ritual could be completed, his cancer would be cured. The charge of attempted murder would fall on Ethan. Mr. Yu had plenty of ways to distance himself from it all. As long as he could be cured, nothing else mattered. Ethan's eyes were practically bleeding with rage. He realized he had been desperately trying to save his father, only to be cast aside like a pawn. Holly glanced at the cursing Ethan and the laughing Mr. Yu, then pulled out her phone and made a call. "Hey Julian, are you there yet? They couldn't have gotten far. Send me their location as soon as you track them." After hanging up, Holly somehow produced a motorcycle and swung her leg over it. "Let's go," she said, putting on a helmet and tossing one to me. I was stunned. "For what?" "The standoff between humans is over," she said. "Now it's a battle between gods. If you want to watch, get on." By the time Holly and I reached the beach, it was too late. Isabel's driver and bodyguards were lying unconscious on the sand, knocked out by Holly's associate, the guy named Julian. But Julian had also been a step too late. A complex ritual circle was drawn in the sand, with the violet jadeite placed in the center. "The ritual, it's a success." A woman's excited voice echoed across the sea under the night sky. A month later, Holly went to visit Mr. Yu in custody. She told him, the ritual was a success. Mr. Yu's old, weary eyes lit up with an unprecedented brilliance. He laughed hysterically. For an old, sick man, all the gold and silver in the world couldn't compare to his health. That's why he had spent a fortune on rare jewels for the ritual, all to have his terminal illness cured. Holly looked at Mr. Yu with pity and said softly, "The ritual was completed a month ago. In this past month, have you felt your health improve at all?" Mr. Yu froze. Holly sighed. "No, right?" Mr. Yu began to tremble. "Impossible. That master couldn't have lied to me. She really knows dark magic." Holly nodded. "Yes, the old woman is indeed a very powerful Ajarn, or sorceress, from Southeast Asia. But the problem is, this ritual was never meant to serve you. It was for her." Mr. Yu's mouth fell open. Holly said sadly, "The true name of this ritual is soul transfer." Yes, on that day when they arrived at the beach, the person excitedly shouting, "The ritual is a success," wasn't the old woman. It was Jessica. She stood in the center of the beach, dancing and stroking her smooth, fair skin. Meanwhile, the old woman beside her touched her own aged skin, let out a loud wail, and fainted. Holly looked at the ashen-faced Mr. Yu. "Do you understand now?" The old woman's real goal was to use this ritual to live again in a young, beautiful body. From cultivating the beauty pearl onward, this was always her goal. But because the ritual required priceless jade as a soul stone, which she couldn't afford, she found you. The entire time, you were just paving the way for someone else's plan. Mr. Yu, you've been a shrewd businessman for most of your life. And now, you've lost your fortune and your son, all to help a stranger regain her beauty. I'm afraid you'll just have to stay in the critical care ward and wait for the cancer to consume you." Mr. Yu trembled violently, his mouth gaping like a suffocating fish. Finally, his eyes rolled back and he passed out. Holly showed no pity. She stood up, left the room, and walked outside. The sun was shining brightly, as if all the dark conspiracies of Southeast Asia had been nothing but a dream. Perhaps life is just like that. Everyone has their own beautiful dream. But eventually, everyone must wake up. In this story, aside from Sarah, who was saved and built a better life for herself through her own efforts, eventually joining the Miami Project and becoming Isabel's right-hand woman, everyone else's dreams were shattered. Like Jessica, who craved beauty but ended up with an old, withered body. Like Ethan, who wanted his father's affection but was abandoned by him in the end. Like Mr. Yu, who wanted health but was left with nothing. And like the old woman, who spent so much effort to finally obtain Jessica's body, only to run into Julian, a soul chaser. Julian picked up the violet jadeite and said, "This stone, it's indeed very suitable for sealing a living soul." Then, the man who looked to be in his 20s squinted at the 80-something-year-old woman and sighed. "Young lady, you have to face the consequences when you do something wrong. There's always a bigger fish." The old woman used supernatural powers to satisfy her desires, only to be subdued by a stronger supernatural force. Julian sealed the old woman's soul inside the jadeite. And so, the world only knew that Jessica had gone on a trip to Southeast Asia with the Yu family's son. The son was arrested for a crime, and Jessica, whether from injury or shock, fell into a deep coma. With the old woman and her dark magic sealed away, the power of the beauty pearl dissolved. Jessica's looks began to fade, becoming even worse than before she had ever used the pearl. Her parents wept by her hospital bed, seeking out famous doctors, but nothing worked. It was simply because there was no soul in that body anymore. Jessica's soul was now in the old woman's body. Deemed insane, she was locked away in a mental hospital in Thailand. "So, when are you planning to put Jessica's soul back in her body?" Holly asked Julian in a small, hidden shop tucked away in an alley. Julian was sipping a cold orange soda while reading Shen Sungwon's The Border Town. He waved his hand dismissively. "Maybe never, maybe tomorrow." The end.